For 10 years, every Friday morning at exactly 6:15, a black truck rolled up outside a small, rusty garage at the edge of town and dumped broken engines like trash. And every Friday, a tired single father named Daniel Hayes stood there with grease on his hands, holding his little daughter's lunchbox in one hand and watching another pile of ruined metal crash onto his cracked concrete floor. The engines came from Harrington Motors, one of the biggest companies in the country. Their CEO, Victoria Harrington, never called them engines. She called them junk. "Give them to that garage man," she once said with a laugh. "At least he'll feel important touching something from a real company." Daniel heard those words from one of her drivers. He did not get angry. He did not shout. He did not complain. He just looked at his daughter Lily, who was sitting on an old tire doing homework, and said quietly, "One day, sweetheart, people will learn that nothing is truly broken if the right hands care enough to fix it." If this story touches your heart by the end, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because stories like this remind us that the people the world laughs at today can become the reason the world stands silent tomorrow. Daniel Hayes had not always owned a broken garage. Years earlier, he had been one of the most talented engine technicians in the city. He understood machines the way musicians understand melody. He could listen to an engine cough once and know where the pain was hiding. But life had not been kind to him. His wife, Emily, passed away when Lily was only 3 years old. The hospital bills swallowed his savings. The grief swallowed his strength. And by the time he tried to return to work, the world had already moved on without him. So Daniel opened Hayes' garage in an old storage building near the highway. The roof leaked when it rained. The heater barely worked in winter. Customers mostly came to him when they could not afford anyone else. Still, Daniel never cheated anyone. If a repair cost $20, he charged $20. If a customer was short, he let them pay later. If an old widow came in with a dead battery, he replaced it and told her it was on the house. People respected Daniel, but respect did not pay rent. Every night, after closing the garage, he cooked dinner for Lily, helped her with schoolwork, washed their clothes in the sink when the laundromat was too expensive, and then returned to the garage while she slept in a small room behind the office. That was when Daniel worked on the engines. The broken Harrington engines. At first, he hated them. They arrived cracked, burned, stripped, and useless. Harrington Motors dumped them because fixing them was more expensive than building new ones. Their engineers said the engines had no value. Their accountants called it waste removal. But Daniel saw something different. He saw patterns. One engine had a cracked cylinder but a perfect crankshaft. Another had a ruined block but a good fuel system. A third had burned wiring but untouched pistons. The company saw dead machines. Daniel saw pieces of life waiting to be rebuilt. So night after night, under a flickering light, Daniel cleaned, measured, repaired, tested, and documented everything. He kept notebooks full of diagrams. He wrote down why the engines failed. He noticed the same defect appearing again and again in Harrington's newest commercial engine line. A small design flaw. A weakness in the cooling channel. Most mechanics would never notice it. Most engineers had missed it. But Daniel saw it clearly because he had spent 10 years with the engines nobody wanted. Meanwhile, Victoria Harrington was building an empire on pride. She inherited Harrington Motors from her father, but she wanted more than success. She wanted attention. She wanted headlines. She wanted people to call her a visionary. At board meetings, she spoke sharply and listened poorly. When senior engineers raised concerns, she dismissed them. When workers asked for better testing, she called them slow. When suppliers warned her about rushed production, she threatened to replace them. Her favorite phrase was, "Winners don't waste time on doubts." And for a while, the world believed her. Harrington Motors signed huge contracts. Their new engine line-powered trucks, construction machines, generators, and emergency vehicles. Victoria appeared on magazine covers. Investors praised her. Competitors feared her. But deep inside the machines, the flaw was waiting. The first failures were small. A truck overheated in Arizona. A generator died at a hospital in Ohio. A construction fleet stalled during a major project. Victoria blamed drivers. Then mechanics. Then weather. Then fuel quality. But the failures kept spreading. Within months, Harrington Motors was drowning in warranty claims, lawsuits, and angry customers. News channels showed videos of smoking engines on highways. Stock prices dropped. Investors panicked. Victoria called emergency meetings. Her engineers reviewed data for weeks but could not find the root cause fast enough. The company was bleeding money every day. Then one morning, an old driver named Frank entered Victoria's office. Frank had been the man delivering broken engines to Daniel's garage for years. He was close to retirement, quiet, and usually invisible to executives. Victoria barely looked up. "What is it?" Frank swallowed. "Ma'am, I think there's someone who might know what's wrong with the engines." Victoria frowned. "Who?" Frank hesitated. "Daniel Hayes. The garage owner." The room went silent. One executive laughed under his breath. Victoria stared at Frank as if he had insulted her. "You mean the man we dump scrap on?" "Yes, ma'am," Frank said. "He's been rebuilding them for years. He knows those engines better than anyone." Victoria leaned back in her chair. Her pride wanted to reject the idea immediately. But her company was collapsing. Banks were calling. Contracts were being cancelled. The board was threatening to remove her. So, for the first time in 10 years, Victoria Harrington drove to Hayes' garage. When her expensive car stopped outside the old building, Daniel was helping Lily change the oil in a customer's pickup. Lily was now 13, smart, kind, and strong from growing up around tools and sacrifice. Victoria stepped out in a sharp white suit and high heels that did not belong on an oil-stained floor. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag. "Can I help you?" Victoria looked around the garage with visible discomfort. Engines were lined neatly along the walls. Parts were labeled. Notebooks were stacked beside a workbench. It was poor, but organized. Worn, but alive. "I'm Victoria Harrington," she said. "I know. I need to ask you some questions about our engines." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. 10 years of disrespect hung in the air. 10 years of being treated like a dumping ground. 10 years of hearing her company call his work worthless. But Daniel was not a cruel man. He turned and picked up one of his notebooks. "Your cooling channel design is failing under high-load heat cycles. The metal expands unevenly here." He pointed to a diagram. "That causes microcracks. By the time the warning sensors detect overheating, the damage is already done." Victoria's face changed. Not because she fully understood the repair yet, but because Daniel had answered in 30 seconds what her entire engineering department had failed to explain in 3 months. "How long have you known this?" she asked. "Almost 7 years." Victoria's mouth opened slightly. 7 years? Daniel nodded. "I sent 3 letters to your company." No one replied. Frank, standing behind her, looked down. Victoria remembered something faintly. Reports from a small garage. Letters marked low priority. Complaints from someone her staff had called irrelevant. For the first time, shame touched her face. Daniel continued, "I didn't just find the problem. I built a solution." He led her to the back of the garage, where a rebuilt engine sat on a stand, clean and polished. It looked nothing like the broken machines Harrington had thrown away. This engine has been running in test cycles for 2 years, Daniel said. Same base model. Modified cooling path. Reinforced pressure points. Lower failure rate. Better fuel efficiency. Victoria stared at it. This was not junk. This was the answer. How much do you want? She asked quickly. Daniel looked at Lily. Then back at Victoria. For 10 years, your company dumped what you didn't value at my door. You laughed at my garage. You ignored my warnings. You treated my work like trash. Victoria's jaw tightened. She was not used to being spoken to this way. Daniel's voice stayed calm. I'm not selling you my solution for a check that lets you go back to calling people like me nothing. Then what do you want? I want partnership. I want my design protected. I want my name on it. I want jobs created here in this town. And I want every mechanic, driver, and worker your company ignored to be respected in the process. Victoria almost laughed out of habit. But she could not. Because without Daniel, Harrington Motors might not survive. The negotiations were brutal. Her board hated the idea. Investors resisted. Lawyers tried to pressure Daniel into giving up control. But Daniel had learned patience from grief, discipline from poverty, and courage from fatherhood. He refused to be bullied. When one executive told him, "You should be grateful we're even talking to you," Daniel stood up and said, "No. You should be grateful I still believe broken things can be saved." That sentence changed the room. 3 weeks later, Harrington Motors announced a partnership with Hayes Garage Technologies. The news shocked everyone. Reporters came to the small town. Cameras filmed Daniel standing in front of the garage where it all began. Lily stood beside him, smiling through tears. Victoria stood there too, quieter than anyone had ever seen her. The new engine design saved Harrington Motors from total collapse. The company recalled faulty units, replaced critical parts, and rebuilt trust slowly. It cost them millions, but it saved thousands of jobs. Daniel's small garage became a research and repair center. Local mechanics were hired. Young apprentices were trained. Workers who had been ignored suddenly had a voice. And Daniel did something nobody expected. He kept the old garage sign. Hayes Garage. Rusty letters and all. When a reporter asked why, Daniel smiled and said, "Because this place reminds me that greatness doesn't always begin in glass towers. Sometimes it begins under a leaking roof, with tired hands, a broken heart, and a reason not to quit." Victoria changed too, but slowly. At first, people thought her humility was just public relations. But Frank noticed she started walking the factory floor. She listened to mechanics. She attended safety meetings. She apologized to engineers she had once silenced. One day, she returned to Daniel's garage without cameras. Lily was at the workbench, assembling a small engine model for a school project. Daniel was tightening bolts on a restored truck. Victoria stood in the doorway and said, "I owe you an apology." Daniel looked up. She continued, "Not just for ignoring your letters. Not just for insulting your work. I treated people as if their value depended on their title, their office, or their money. I was wrong." Daniel said nothing for a moment. Then he nodded. Being wrong doesn't destroy a person. Refusing to change does. Victoria's eyes lowered. "Your daughter is lucky to have you." Daniel smiled gently. "No. I'm lucky she gave me a reason to keep going." Years passed. Hayes Garage Technologies grew into one of the most respected repair innovation companies in the country. Daniel became known not as a poor mechanic, but as the man who saved an empire by studying what others threw away. But he never became arrogant. Every Friday morning, when the trucks arrived, not to dump junk anymore, but to deliver engines for rebuilding, Daniel still opened the garage himself. And sometimes, he would see young workers looking discouraged, covered in grease, wondering if their lives would ever change. He would tell them the same thing he once told Lily. Nothing is truly broken if the right hands care enough to fix it. At Lily's high school graduation, Daniel sat in the front row wearing his best suit. It was old, but clean. When Lily's name was called, she walked across the stage with confidence. Her speech surprised everyone. She said, "My father taught me that people may throw broken things at your feet for years. They may call it junk. They may call you small. But if you keep learning, keep working, and keep your heart clean, one day the same things they used to humiliate you can become the foundation of your future." Daniel wiped his eyes. Victoria, sitting quietly in the back, did the same. Because she knew that Lily was not only talking about engines. She was talking about people. Some people are dismissed because they are poor. Some are ignored because they are quiet. Some are underestimated because they do not wear expensive clothes or speak with power. But life has a way of revealing truth. The world often throws broken pieces at humble people. But humble people often build the strongest things from them. Daniel did not win because he hated Victoria. He won because he refused to become bitter. He did not use his pain as poison. He used it as fuel. And Victoria did not lose because her company collapsed. She lost when she stopped listening. She only began to rise again when she learned that wisdom can come from the garage floor, from tired hands, from the people the powerful overlook. So if you are watching this and you feel unseen, remember Daniel Hayes. Maybe people have dumped problems on you for years. Maybe they laughed at your struggle. Maybe they thought your life was too small to matter. But keep going. Keep learning. Keep building. Because sometimes, the thing others call junk is the very thing that will build your empire. And sometimes, the person they underestimate today becomes the person they need tomorrow. If this story inspired you, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Because your story is not over. Your garage may be small today, but your future can still become bigger than anything they imagined.